Hey folks, due to where I'm at in my training life after having trained for 3 decades, I like to run experiments on myself because I'm mostly in maintenance mode now. So I like to run small experiments and just see what happens. If it's something that I'm interested in, I'll run it as an experiment on myself. And as we all know, it doesn't take a lot to maintain your size. So any sensible experimentation should at very least stop me from going backwards. So with that in mind, I recently ran a 6 month experiment on myself from last year to about April this year, and I want to document that with you today. Hopefully, so you can learn from my experience and just as a point of interest because I found it an interesting and fruitful experiment for me. I'm documenting it today because there's been an interest in this style of training. So I thought it would be useful to throw my experience into the ring and just let you guys know what I did, what I experienced, hopefully to give you guys some inspiration and some actual experience about this topic, which so many people are talking about right now. So it was a low volume, high frequency Beardsley style approach. 1 set per exercise, 3 upper sessions a week, and it was between 2 and 3 lowers per week. So I was training between 5 and 6 days. Now, the results actually surprised me. I made some of the best progress that I have in some years. And actually, I even gained new size in some areas. My arms got bigger. If my editor could put up a comparison between my best from 2018 versus where I was earlier this year, you can see the arm size is bigger. The chest is actually fuller as well. Now, some of that is because I'm on stage in one picture. I'm full in the other picture. So it's not a fair comparison, but actually I think it's pretty comparable. So I feel like there was some definite positives, which surprised me because I didn't think I was going to be growing anymore. And my strength was very good during the course of that period too. And I felt great. So that is what today's about. I want to just talk to you a bit about a high frequency, low volume approach that I did. And I'm now documenting a few months later. So really today, I want to just answer the question about whether you can grow from this low volume, high frequency approach, what it means for you practically, because you're different to me. So I'm going to walk you through everything that I would also do differently next time if I was to do it again. Okay, so let's start with what I did and why. So I ran for about 6 months a upper lower, upper lower, upper lower setup. Now in the beginning, it was just 2 lowers. And then towards the middle and by the end, I did 6 days a week and 3 lowers. The volume was extremely low. It was 1 working set per exercise. And generally speaking, it was 1 exercise per body part. So for upper, it was a little bit easier because there was no real crossover. I did a chest press, a side raise, a bicep, tricep. I did 2 upper back exercises, 1 vertical and 1 horizontal. For lower, it was a little bit more unusual because I was doing technically 2 quad exercises. 1 was more of a compound, 1 was an isolation. Then I also had a compound for my hips and glutes, like a hip hinge or a glute bridge, and an isolation for the hamstrings, as well as calves and abs. So that's what I did. And I rotated through 3 different upper templates and 3 or 2 different lower templates. And I just sort of ran them week by week. It was heavily influenced by Chris Beardsley's work, especially the conversations and discussions he's had around fatigue and the fatigue to stimulus ratio. Now, this is not a plug for Chris because I'm not associated with him in any kind of professional capacity. But I will say, I want to give the guy credit. I think he gets unfairly called out in this industry for being dogmatic because he has a rule of not engaging in online back and forths with other influencers. He tends to just avoid that altogether. But I mean, I don't think personally by not engaging in a conversation that makes him dogmatic. And I also don't think if you disagree with him and he doesn't really answer you back, I don't think that makes him dogmatic. That just simply makes him not willing to engage in discussion. So I don't see anything wrong with that. So I will just say, look, I like the guy. I like his work. And so over the course of this 6 months, I kind of followed some of his principles and I personalized it to myself. He doesn't recommend quite as much variety. He recommends much more static number of upper days and lower days, alternating between A, Bs. He generally doesn't recommend an upper lower setup either. He generally goes for more full body. So it was done with my own personalization, of course, but the overriding principles, I do want to give Chris some credit for that because I think he deserves it. more of an extension of what my current beliefs are anyway. I'm more of a moderate volume guy. For you guys who are new to the channel, my general recommendations for the intermediates is about 8 to 16 sets per body part per week. This for me was about 3 sets per body part per week. High frequency, with 3 times a week, which has traditionally worked very well for me. Practically speaking, this wasn't that different from my classic wizard routine where I ran full body about 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, because essentially one hard set with plenty of rest was kind of the equivalent of the 3 sets I was doing previously with about 45-second rest, failing on the last one. So in broad terms, this was not completely unusual territory for me. So anyway, let's now speak about the results, the strength, the recovery, and the physique. This is what everyone wants to know about. First of all, my strength skyrocketed. I hit PRs right the way across the board this year in terms of the numbers that I was lifting at the gym that I'm at. I've been at this gym now for 2 years, and I hit PRs right the way across the board. I was the strongest on a whole bunch of areas. My recovery between the sessions was insane. Every lift felt very fresh. I've always talked about the recovery of the joints versus the recovery of the muscles. I felt like everything was recovered very nicely for the most part. So I could train upper body heavy on Sunday and come back on Tuesday and train upper body heavy again, all the same body parts with no issue. And I was feeling like I was recovered, so I could express the strength that I was building every single session. There was no training on fatigue. I was always pretty fresh. Third thing is my arms significantly gained size. This was a surprise for me. Biceps have always been something that I've been working on, but I really felt this year they've improved by leaps and bounds, and that was the result of this 6-month stretch of this style of training. But as you can see from the picture comparison, pretty significant. So it was a pleasant surprise. Now, the other thing was I was in a fat loss phase for a large portion of this time. I ran a cut for roughly the whole of those 6 months, which led to a photo shoot at the end in about April, May time. I'll put up some pictures of the photo shoot as well. But yeah, that was kind of what I did. I went from a very large 95 kilo down to a very svelte 74 kilos. So it was a large cut. Now, I will say I still think I was probably fat enough at the beginning to see progress. So most of the progress probably was from things that I was doing near the beginning of the routine, because towards the end, the diet was really quite tough and I doubt I was gaining any muscle. I was probably just doing quite well to preserve muscle. So yeah, it worked really, really well. I mean, I was surprised at how doable the 5 or 6 day schedule was. I felt very fresh and I felt like I was going into every session feeling very strong. There was never a point where I was dragging my heels. This was despite doing 30 to 45 minutes of cardio after the end of every session as well. So really good. And I will say during the course of this year is when I made the majority of my videos calling out a lot of the high volume studies as being swelling, edema, and just having problems with the studies. I don't buy it because it just doesn't make sense that there's this infinite relationship of volume and growth. There are diminishing returns in everything we do. Why would there no diminishing returns in that study? But anyway, without getting into all that again, you guys can check out the old videos. My current stance is I still think all those high volume studies are BS. I don't believe it. And I think right now the crowd is unraveling and I've been calling it out for a long time. So on that note, actually, what I want to just say is I do coaching full time. So if all of this sounds confusing, if you don't know what to believe, you don't know what to do, if you'd like to experiment with some approaches like this that I'm laying out today, or you just want to get moving and you've not really gained for a while, then get in touch. I offer one-to-one coaching and I will help you achieve whatever goal you set out. So there's a link in the description. Get in touch. Now, I want to briefly just have a quick discussion on what this means in terms of volume recommendations. Like, how has this changed my mind in terms of how I disseminate volume recommendations to you guys or to my clients? So I think the actual volume probably hasn't changed that much, because generally speaking, my recommendations for 8 to 16 sets per body part per week for intermediates is still very valid. I mean, it's worked for hundreds of lifters in the past, so it doesn't automatically break that. And I've always said that advanced lifters can do less because they tend to train harder with higher poundages. So it doesn't change that. But what this does change is potentially the way in which we discuss volume, because I think at the moment the volume recommendations are done within the template of us assuming that frequency is just a way of organizing volume. I want to heavily question that, because I don't think I would get very far by doing 3 sets once a week, whereas 3 sets across the week, 1 set each, 3 times a week, was a completely different animal. In the future, when we are discussing volume recommendations, I think I'm going to need to provide those volume recommendations within the context of also discussing frequency, because it's not as simple as just saying volume per week, frequency is just a way of arranging volume. Frequency is clearly its own major factor. I think it's just another case where we've been misled by the evidence-based bros and misinterpretation of the science. Now that we've covered what I did and what the results were, let's now discuss what I would do differently next time. Hopefully, this will also help you if you decide to implement this on your own. The first big major mistake that I made was pushing weight too fast. So I basically broke my own progression rule. Now, my own progression rule is to progress when things feel easy. So I generally these days default to roughly once a month because that seems to work out quite well. I broke that rule numerous times over and over. But listen, the reason that I broke that rule was because I was getting stronger so rapidly. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you should add weight to the bar all the time if you can, because your joints need time to adapt as well. And you should just get better at doing the exercise. So I also think my form probably could have been better on some lifts. I probably was a little bit too loose in terms of where I would like to be. You know, if you're lifting at such a high percentage of your 1 rep max. And I think the next thing, me personally, this is where I diverge from Chris Beardsley's approach. I personally think I could have rotated exercises more thoughtfully. You know, if I had done a true heavy, light, medium approach, that actually would have solved a lot of issues. And it would have been very reminiscent of my wizard approach from 2007 to 2010. I think that works very well. I think the more frequently you train a body part, the better it is to have some type of daily undulating periodization like the wizard involved in it. The other thing is I didn't really deload. I think some short tapered blocks with reduced frequency and maybe even volume would have been a good idea. By volume, I mean maybe taking out some of the additional exercises for the arms and whatever else. You know, you can't really reduce the volume if you're doing 1 set. But certainly I could have reduced the frequency maybe to a couple of times a week just to maintain for a week, let my joints recover and then get back to it. I think these changes would have made the whole thing more sustainable and productive. I would also like to see me do it in a bulk as well, which is currently where I'm at. On that note, I want to just plug the sponsor of the video. That is me, my app, FazLifts RX, your prescription for gains. This is an awesome app. It is an AI-powered app where you literally get coached by AI Faz, who has been trained on my materials, my videos, my books, tons of data from thousands of athletes who have run my programs. So all you do is you download the app and you speak to the app. You quite literally speak to AI Faz. He doesn't have a mustache yet, but maybe I'll speak to the guys and get him to program one in. But you can speak to AI Faz. Whatever routine you want, you can quite simply give it some basic parameters, give it your equipment, how many days a week you want to train, whether you're a high, medium or low volume guy, what your goals are, and it'll spit out a program. And if you want the program more personalized, you will just speak to it. You will just type in and say, hey, I want it looking like this. Or you'll say, oh, Faz mentioned something about high frequency, low volume. Maybe produce something like that. And it will do it for you. It is magic. And after every session, it will ask you how it went. You can give it a synopsis. It will make changes every week or every session, whatever you want. It is awesome. Literally just download it, speak to Virtual Faz, and he will just adjust everything on the fly. Speak to it like you would speak to me. It's super easy, super good. So give that a try. Link is in the description below. Now, I want to end with a bit of a conclusion. So what are the bigger lessons? You guys know I like to talk about one of the bigger things we can learn from our experiences, because I'm big on that in life. I think you can learn from every experience, whether it's good or bad. The big thing that I want to say with this is frequency is not just a way of organizing volume, because that seems to be the common misconception now. People just say, well, it's all about weekly volume. No, it isn't. Frequency is its own independent growth driver. It has to be, because that first set on a day is worth a lot. We know that. Everyone agrees on that right now. The more frequent you're getting first touches in a week, within reason, the better it's going to be. So up to 3 times a week seems to be very productive. Now, beyond that point, I think there are some use cases, and I've done 6 days a week full body myself. But the main thing I want to just point out here is that frequency is its own growth driver. I mean, I would argue intensity is number one, then frequency, and I think volume is a distant second. Because from what I found, as long as you're doing that one set, so you're getting your frequency, your bout in, it's highly productive. And if you can just do that as often as you can recover, you're going to make very good gains. And I think that's a much more powerful strategy because you're doing less overall volume for potentially equal or more growth than you would with a less frequent schedule, which is going to be great for recovery. So if you can recover, I would urge you to train more often. I've always recommended frequencies of 2 or 3 times a week and more. I've personally never really gotten that much growth from a bro split. It's something that I would use for maintenance, and I have used for maintenance, but I never really grow from that. It feels good. It feels good on the joints, but my experience has been always that I needed more frequency. I have theories about who might prosper from body part splits. I think guys who are generally more robust, who have larger bone structures, there are various reasons why they might benefit from a lower frequency. But equally speaking, I think those guys would also benefit from a higher frequency if they programmed it correctly. I also think guys on TRT or enhanced, on drugs, whatever, I think they benefit much more so from bro splits because they are getting a lot of their strength from the bottle and they are getting muscle maintained across the week. So they don't need to provide the mechanical stimulus multiple times a week. So there are a few use cases for where the bro split once a week would work better. As I say, for me, it's just never been that effective. And yes, despite the occasional troll that I still get on this channel, I am drug-free, I'm natural. So the next thing I want to say is that volume is the least important of the three, in my opinion, in my experience. I think it's in that hierarchy of intensity, frequency, and volume. Without intensity, without sufficient intensity, there is nothing. Because if your sets aren't hard enough, you don't have any volume. Because volume is counted as the number of hard sets. Same with frequency. You have no frequency because you're doing nothing. So if intensity is lacking, you get nothing at all. Now, frequency, I think, is more important than volume because, again, it's about the first touches during the week. If you can hit a body part, come back to it as soon as you're recovered, hit it again, you're going to grow more. And in my experience and that of my clients, that tends to work very, very well. And also, you can get away with less volume overall in the week. So you get more stimulus for equal or less fatigue. And that's a great win. So this setup works very well because it let me train hard, often, and then recover. Right, guys. So hopefully that gave you just a good idea of what I did, and you've seen the pictures from that time. I think you'll agree. I definitely put on some muscle, which surprised me. So yeah, if you're interested in this type of training and also how to progress properly, check out this next video, and that is to do with my monthly progression model. Go click on that link, and I will see you over there.